Hello everyone and welcome to part 19 of my Milwaukee Bucks MyGM on the Xbox One here on Cloud92TV. And starting off this episode, I found that Jabari Parker is actually in the running to being the MVP this year, which I think is a pretty big deal. Larry Sanders is also in the running to being the Defensive Player of the Year. Anyways, I have a lot to talk about. I'll see you guys down at the court. In this game, we will be facing the Washington Wizards, and unlike many other teams, the Wizards roster has not changed much in the past 3 seasons. They basically have the same starting 5 that they had at the start of Season 1. And there has been so much new news in both the NBA and NBA2k since my last episode in this series, and I want to talk about those things. The first thing I want to talk about is the injury to Paul George. I'm sure by now this news is basically old news for most of you, but I think this is a huge blow to the Pacers. The Pacers have had such a rough offseason. They lost Lance Stevenson, which is a bad blow to them. He went to the Charlotte Hornets, and then right after that, they lost Paul George as well, and George was by far their best player. I had the Pacers being the second best team in the Eastern Conference, and now you could debate that the Pacers may not even make the playoffs. In case you guys somehow do not know this, Paul George was trying out for the international team that was going to play at the FIBA tournament this summer, and in one of the scrimmages that they were having to see who would make the team, James Harden stole the ball. He went down on a break, and Paul George tried getting a chase down block. George ended up missing the block, and then he jumped in the air and his foot landed in between the actual court and the padding that goes on the basketball hoop, so his foot got wedged in between those two spots, and he ended up, I think, breaking his leg. The video footage of it is absolutely gruesome. People are making comparisons to Kevin Ware, and he will not be playing for the entire next season. And what I want to talk about now is the Pacers this upcoming season. Obviously, they're going to have a rough year. They are definitely not going to be the number 2 team in the East, but the question still remains on whether or not they will even make the playoffs. In my opinion, I cannot see the Pacers making the playoffs. They do have Roy Hibbert and David West, and those guys are decent players, but they're not going to be the ones that lead the Pacers to a playoff run, and especially now the Eastern Conference is starting to become a more balanced conference, whereas last year it was seriously just the Miami Heat and the Pacers, and now there are multiple teams that could make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. The Eastern Conference is definitely stronger than it was last year, and because it is stronger, I don't think the Pacers have a shot of making the playoffs. An even bigger question about Paul George's injury is, will he be able to come back? I'm a pretty big Paul George fan, and I'm really rooting for him. I hope he is able to make a comeback. I hope it's not one of these things where he gets one injury and it just leads to a whole bunch of injuries afterwards, but only time will tell to see how Paul George is able to deal with this injury in the future, and hopefully he'll still be able to have a good career. The next big piece of NBA news is Kevin Love. It is officially confirmed. He will be going to the Cavaliers, and I think the Cavaliers are trading them Andrew Wiggins, and I have mixed feelings about this trade. On one hand, the Cavaliers are becoming a more win-now team. They have 3 superstars. They have Kevin Love, LeBron James, and Kyrie Irving, and those are 3 guys that could definitely win a championship. But on the other hand, Andrew Wiggins could turn out to be an amazing player that makes the Cavs regret this trade. We don't really know what is going to happen to Wiggins. He could be a great player, he could be a bust, but depending on how he performs in the future, that's going to decide who wins out on this trade. If Andrew Wiggins ends up performing like a number 1 pick, like a Tim Duncan or LeBron, where he's a Hall of Famer and a great player, the Cavs are definitely going to regret this. So that's all the news that's going on in the NBA right now. There is a whole bunch of big NBA 2k15 news that gets me really excited. The first piece of news given out was Cruz. Cruz will be coming back in the next game. The only bad thing about it is that it is only said to be coming back in the current gen version. It's only going to come back in the PS3 and Xbox 360. They could later tell us that it's coming for the next gen system, but I honestly don't think it's going to be coming to next gen. And here's why I'm saying that. We all kind of know at this point that the next gen version of NBA 2k14 was so much much better than the current gen version. The next gen version had better graphics, better gameplay, and in my opinion, there were a lot of modes that were better than the current gen version. Just for example, the My Player in NBA 2k14 next gen was so much better than the current gen one. So that basically means if you had the next gen systems, you had no reason of buying the current gen version of this game, and that is most likely going to apply for NBA 2k15 as well, unless you have some sort of incentive to buy the current gen version. So by adding crews to NBA 2k15 current gen, that's going to give people an incentive to buy the next gen version so they get better modes like the My Player, but at the same time they'll kind of be forced to buy the current gen version, that way they can get crews. So I am really hoping that crews comes to next gen as well, but honestly I just cannot see it happening. There was also a new mode that was announced that will be coming to the next gen system, and that is My League, and they have not really given a big description on what My League exactly is. So far they have said it is kind of like MyGM, except it's a little bit more realistic, where there's things like more realistic trades and that kind of thing, because in MyGM you do have a lot of blockbuster trades, not only going on with your team but with a lot of teams around the league. And I was extremely disappointed when I heard about My League for two reasons. The first reason why I was disappointed with it was because they never said if you could have online leagues, and that is something that was lacking in the next gen system. We didn't have any form of online leagues. All we could really do is play MyGMs by ourselves. And the second reason why this news made me upset was because they announced it after they announced crews for the current gen system. I think they tried to make it sound like here all the current gen people get crews while all the next gen get My League, and to be honest, My League is not a replacement for crews. Crews was such a great mode and I don't want to lose it, because to be honest, I'm not going to buy two versions of the same game. I'm only going to get the next gen version, and I don't care what the current gen version has, I'm just not going to buy it. So that is all the news that I wanted to discuss in this video. Let's get into the actual gameplay. At halftime we had more than a 20-point lead on the Wizards, and we already have 75 points in the third quarter. Not only that, but Jabari Parker is on set to hit a new career high in points. His career high right now is 42 points, and I think we got that about 2 episodes ago, and in this game he could hit 50. At the end of the first half he already had 30 points, and he's on set of getting 60 this entire game. So you know I'm gonna try to give him the ball every single possession. I want him to hit 50 points, and he's getting an and one there. He was just on fire this entire game. Now he's running the break and getting a second and one in a row. We already have 93 points in just the third quarter. And one thing I just want to say quickly is that this episode was actually supposed to be up against the Boston Celtics. I had the whole game recorded and I was so excited to show it to you guys because it got pretty intense. In case you guys don't know this, the Celtics in MyGM are so stacked because in mine they have both Kevin Love and Kobe, so you can only see how good of a game that really was. Unfortunately, for some reason, the second half of the video file got corrupt, so you guys would only be able to see the first half. And not only that, but you guys know at the end of every episode I simulate further into the season, so we are now further into the season, and I think we have about 2 months left, so I'm gonna have to play 3 games in the next 2 months, so they're gonna be a little bit closer together, and there's gonna be a little bit less simulating in these next 3 episodes. So with under a minute left in the third quarter, we have over a 30-point lead, but John Wall is trying to somehow make a comeback. He's slamming it down at the other end. 30 seconds left, they're giving it to John Wall again, and he had an amazing game. He was just getting by our defenders with ease, and he's making crazy layups like that over Omar Ashik. Now they're giving it to Trevor Ariza, and he is trying to make 3-pointers with Larry Sanders in his face. You know that is not going to go in. Jabari Parker is going to run the break and pop a 3 at the other end, and he has surpassed the 50-point marker. He is now at 52 points, and he doesn't even have half our team's points. That's just how good we are performing offensively. There, I tried doing an alley-oop to Jabari Parker off the pick and roll, but for some reason it went to Larry Sanders, but it still worked out. The Wizards are making a 3 at the other end, but at this point their points are meaningless. We have over a 20-point lead. Giannis Antetokounmpo is going to head into the post. He's backing down the defender. He's going to fade away to the right side and get that to go. At this point with 6 minutes left, I only played our backups. The record for the most points on the Bucks is 57 points, so I could have kept Parker in and tried to get him 58 points, but knowing the injury cheese in this game, I did not want to have Parker play and have him get injured in a game that we are basically guaranteed to win at this point. Nevertheless, 52 points is an amazing accomplishment, especially when you consider that Parker is only in his second year in the league. Now with under 4 minutes left in the game, we have 125 points. I think that is the most points I've ever scored in this game. The Wizards are running the break and they're somehow making a floater there, And that is going to end this game. The Bucks will walk out of Milwaukee with a 100-130 win over the Washington Wizards. We outscored them by 30 points, and I think that is the biggest blowout in this entire series, and that is all thanks to one guy. That is definitely thanks to Jabari Parker, who ended the game with 54 points, but he was not the only guy contributing. Brandon Knight ended with 24, so combined, the two guys had more than 2/3 of our points. And before ending this episode, I am signing Adrian Payne, and I'm adding one more year to his contract. He will be with the Milwaukee Bucks in the next season if we decide to play next year. And now I'm simulating all the way up to March 3rd. The next episode in this series will be up against the Toronto Raptors, and the standings have definitely changed. Of course, the Heat are the #1 team in the league. They do have Dirk Nowitzki, LeBron, and Dwayne Wade, but the Bucks have moved up from the number 4 spot, I think, in the East, all the way up to the number 2 spot. Looking at the Western Conference, somehow the New Orleans Pelicans are the #1 team in the West. So I hope you guys had a fun time watching this video. Be sure to have a great day. God bless you guys. Bye.